Joining us today on Inspiring Perth Academy is a world-renowned Michelin star chef who owns multiple highly successful restaurants in Edinburgh and has appearances on the Great British Menu, the Chef's Prodigy, and as a judge on MasterChef, Tom Kitchin.
Tom, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thanks for having me, guys. Looking forward to it.
Firstly, I want to ask, what age did you first realise that you wanted to become a chef?
It wasn't like a penny dropping moment. What happened, guys, is that I started washing the dishes in the local pub on the weekend. I think I was about 13, 14 years old. And it's not like I went in and suddenly fell in love with cooking. I went in and I really enjoyed the environment of working in a busy pub and the pressure of washing the dishes. And really now with my older and wiser head, looking back on it, what I really fell in love with was the adrenaline and the kind of team ethos of being in this busy pub environment. And you know, it was a bit like sport in a way. You know, when you play team sports, you're all in it together and you're all got one goal. And it was that same kind of buzz that I got washing the dishes. But then what happened was I started to progress little by little from the dishes onto the starters. And that's when I really started to fall in love with food, I think.
And we were also just wondering whereabouts you trained.
Well, the pub that I started with is not too far away from you. It's in Kinneswood, which is on Loch Leven as you come down the motorway from Perth to Edinburgh. So I started there working part-time. I then went to Perth College and did hospitality up by you guys. And then I took my first full-time job at the famous Gleneagles Hotel as a young apprentice chef. So I was in there at like 17, 18 years old. And then to cut a long story short, I was in London when I was like 18, 19. Then I went to Paris, working in big iconic restaurants, big, you know, really big, what we call gastronomic restaurants. So went to Paris, then I came back to London, another 2 years. And then I went back to France. I went to Monte Carlo, Monaco, and worked in a very prestigious restaurant there. And, you know, I just tried to work in the best places I possibly could. And then opened the restaurant with my wife in Edinburgh in 2006.
Do you think the climate's changed at all now? Because obviously the UK food scene is probably as good as it's ever been. Do you think chefs have to go abroad now to train, or is it still the same?
No, absolutely not. No, I think, you know, that's the wonderful thing. I mean, I talked about it in another podcast recently. When I was young and your age, the only place I could go was like get to London as quickly as possible, you know, like get to London. That's where it was happening. But now the wonderful thing about the UK is there's so many great restaurants. You can go to Cornwall, you can go to Cambridge, you can go to London, you can go to Birmingham, you can go to Manchester, you can come to Edinburgh, you can go to Glasgow, wherever. There's amazing restaurants all over the UK now, which is really exciting. But on the flip side to that, I would really encourage young people to think about going to live in a different culture. I think that really opens your mind, and I think it makes you a better rounded person, you know, if you do travel. I think that's really I would advise that anyway.
And we're also wondering, what is the pressure like of being head chef?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of pressure being head chef because, well, if you take our main restaurant, the Kitchen, the Michelin star restaurant, it's a prestigious restaurant. We charge a lot of money, and you have that burden of expectation on your shoulders. And you know, there's an old expression that you're only as good as your last meal. So, you know, you can't just do one plate and think that you're brilliant. You know, it's a bit like football, you know, like you win one match, you haven't won the league, you know, you've just won one match. So you're only as good as your last meal. You never take anything for granted. The crazy thing about restaurants is you never know who's coming into the restaurant. You know, you have all the reservations, but, you know, it could be a Michelin inspector, it could be a journalist, it could be a multi-billionaire, it could be a footballer, it could be a young couple on a date. You know, that's the excitement of hospitality.
And obviously you've had your Michelin star for quite a while now. Do you have your ambition sort of shift now? Do you want to get to 2 stars, or what is the difference, I guess, between 1 and 2 stars?
Yeah, I mean, that's $1 million question, that one. I mean, of course we're ambitious, we're very ambitious, but the thing with the Michelin star is that you have to regain the Michelin star every year. So you have no God-given right to to get the Michelin star every year. So you can lose it, you can win another one, but you have to keep evolving. You have to keep pushing all the time. So we're very, very ambitious. The restaurant is, I think it's 15 years this year in June. So that's 15 years that we've had a Michelin star, but the restaurant from 15 years ago to the restaurant today is unrecognizable. It's evolved so much. And, right at the beginning, it was so simple. It was so basic. We were very, very small and humble, and we're still humble, but we're now a very luxurious and prestigious restaurant, but we still just have one Michelin star. So the evolution is really important. But as you get older, you start to understand, what is exactly you're driving for. And, when you have customers coming back, once a month, once every 2 weeks, every summer, if they're coming from somewhere else, you really, that's the bread and butter of restaurants, is returning customers.
And obviously coronavirus has had quite a big impact on everyone, but we were just wondering how much of an effect it's had on your business and how you're combating these challenges.
Yeah, of course. Well, first and foremost, no more so than you guys, missing out on, your school life, especially at such an important time of your lives. But in my world, hospitality, it's been absolutely catastrophic, really, because restaurants, not only is it making restaurants suffer, restaurants are at the top of the chain, okay? Underneath the restaurants, well, of course, we have all the people that work in the restaurants. So we have nothing coming in and we've not been able to operate properly. Then underneath that, we have all the suppliers to the restaurants. So if the restaurants are not operating, that means the suppliers are not operating. And then there's all the people that work for the suppliers. Then underneath the suppliers is all the producers. So you have all your farmers, your fishermen, your growers, all the people that produce the products. So if the restaurants are not working, then it goes down to the supplier, down to the producer. And it's like dominoes, it's just like the whole pack comes down. Even like little things like taxi drivers, like taxi drivers thrive in a city like Edinburgh on the business of restaurants. And then there's it just goes further down, for example, to the florists who do the flowers in the restaurant, to the guys who clean the restaurants, So everyone is impacted. So without the restaurants operating, it affects so many people. And then on top of that, we have so many young people that work in hospitality. And that's really, really hard, because again, they won't be much older than you guys, them having to deal with mentally, what we've all had to deal with. So yeah, it's very challenging days. Yeah.
We always ask all our guests sort of what advice would you have to young people who want to get into your industry?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's no point coming into hospitality unless you can find a love and a passion for what we do, because it's a very demanding industry. But if you find a love for hospitality, and it's not just about cooking, it could be front of house, it could be service, waiters, it could be reception, hotels. There's so many different aspects of hospitality. First and foremost, you have to find the love. Secondly, after that, you need to get yourself into a good establishment. I mean, a really good establishment where you can learn the bricks and mortar of how to work properly, And from then you want to progress yourself. Try to learn as much as possible. Don't try, at 18 to try and become head chef at 21. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, So take your time. Really learn your industry, absorb as much as possible. And as we touched on earlier, really try to travel, try to work in different places so you can absorb, so many different techniques and philosophies. And then hopefully you can bring that all together and you can start to do something, whether you're going to be a head chef in somewhere or go try to do your own business or whatever it is, but try and bring together everything that you've learned over the years.
And also, just throughout, obviously, you've had quite a bit of training and you've been around the world in these various places. We're just wondering, out of all that, what is the most valuable piece of advice that you've ever received?
The most valuable piece of advice? I mean, there's been so many, but I think, you know, what we were talking about earlier is, you know, you're only as good as your last meal. But I always remember right at the beginning, you know, I was very aware of like what we were putting on the menu. And one of my old chefs said to me, just put on the menu the food that you enjoy eating. And that was like, because I was a little bit at the beginning, we were so young and so, you know, we didn't really know what was going on. So I had some people saying, oh, you need to have a chicken dish and you need to have a salmon dish and you need to have a fillet of beef dish. But I didn't want to cook that. I wanted to cook pig's heads and trotters and, you know, unusual things that, you know, had been part of my training. And that was really good because when people read a menu, they're like, oh, wow, pig's trotters or, you know, pig's head or, you know, something like that. And that makes it interesting. And that was a good piece of advice, yeah.
We're now going to move on to our quickfire questions. So,
oh, yeah.
here we go. I'll just start us off. So what is your favourite comfort food?
My wife's signature dish, which is smoked salmon lasagna. It's very good. It's very good.
Tom, what is your biggest pet peeve?
I really hate anything I couldn't, like something from a bad chippy, which is really rank. That would just like, I couldn't handle that. That would put me off. And ready meals as well. I can't handle ready meals.
Oh, fair enough. What is your favourite thing about Edinburgh?
Edinburgh. I mean, Edinburgh for me is the greatest city in the world. I absolutely love it. It's got everything from natural beauty to, you know, cosmopolitan cafes. It's small enough that you can get around fast and easy. And it's just, you know, really like after this pandemic, I've just even more fallen in love with Edinburgh now that I've walked most of Edinburgh.
What's one thing that you'd love to do but you never have?
One thing that I'd love to do that I've never had. I think I would have tried a wee bit harder at school, actually, guys. Do you know what I mean? Because I really didn't. I wasn't. I didn't give it my all, and I've always regretted that a wee bit. But on the flip side to that, I've always had this incredible working determination from when I left school. So maybe if I just tried a little bit harder at the maths and the English, then that would have given me a better rounded self. But on the flip side of that, I went to live in France, and I didn't speak French when I arrived there. And I learned French. Do you know what I mean? So when you push yourself, it's amazing what you can achieve. And I wish I'd just pushed myself that little bit more at school.
And finally, if you weren't a chef, what do you think you would be?
If I wasn't a chef, well, the dream was to do something in sport, you know, but, you know, when I got to your age, I realized I wasn't going to make it as a footballer. So we had to rethink it. But I don't know. That's a really good question. I think I would love to have done something in sport, whether it was PE teacher or I don't know, even, you know, got into football in some way. I don't know, but I never really thought about it because I'm very lucky. You know what? I've never felt like I've done a day's work in my life because I love what I do so much. And I think that's a really good motto. If you can find a job like that, that makes life a lot easier.
With that, we come to the end of the interview, and I'd like to say once again, thank you so much, Tom, for coming on.
Not at all, guys. Thanks very much for having me.
Great once again to have you on, Tom. What a brilliant guest.
Okay, guys. Well, keep up the good work, and
Will do.
I hope you get back to school soon.
You can follow us on Twitter at Academy SPLT, on Instagram at Perth Academy SPLT. We'll be back next week with another video, and we will see you later.